The Dragonback series by Timothy Zahn. Book 1, Dragon and Thief. Chapter 17.
Drabs was as good as his word. The cabin he got for Jack was easily the nicest room the boy had ever been in, except for one groundside hotel suite Uncle Virgil had rented them once during a high-stakes scam. Of course, the fact that Drabs had kept his promise on the cabin probably meant he would keep other promises too, such as his threat to hunt Jack down and kill him if he tried to run. The first job, after catching up on each other's stories, was to make up for the 3 days of missed meals. According to the map in his stateroom, the Star of Wonder had 10 dining rooms and snack bars, 4 of which were open 24 hours a day. The room's status listing showed that Drabs had left a generous credit line for him to draw on, so eating and other incidentals wouldn't be a problem. But having also lived in the same set of clothes for those same 3 days, he didn't think the high-paying customers of the liner would appreciate mingling with him over lunch. Fortunately, his stateroom was fancy enough to have a small food synthesizer set off in one corner. The menu was limited to simple snacks, but there was enough of a selection for him to at least take the edge off his hunger. Not surprisingly, the synthesizer balked at preparing Dracos's favorite hamburger and tuna and chocolate sauce sandwich. Jack solved that problem by ordering a hamburger, a tuna fish sandwich, and a chocolate sundae, then putting them together himself. The dragon had to make do without the motor oil. After that, he took a trip to one of the shops for some changes of clothing, which Dracos insisted on. A shower was next, which Dracos insisted on even more firmly. With all of what Uncle Verge would have called housekeeping duties out of the way, Jack could finally get down to business. Sprawling across one of the 2 beds in the shirt and slacks of a suit he'd bought, he began going through the Star of Wonder's information booklets, reading about the ship's services and studying the layouts of the various decks. Dracos, for his part, curled himself up onto the chairs, the small writing desk across the room, singing softly to himself and doodling on a notepad. I don't know, Dracos, Jack sighed, letting the map drop onto the bed and leaning back against the bulkhead. It was hard to believe that after sleeping for 3 days straight he could be tired, but he was. He was tired, frustrated, and very, very scared. I feel like I've been dropped into a deep hole with the whole universe standing on top shoveling dirt in on me. What are we going to do? The dragon paused in his singing and looked up.
About what?
He asked, readjusting the stylus as had gripped in one of his front paws. What do you mean about what? Jack demanded, a flash of annoyance cutting through the fear. About this whole stupid situation, that's what. You have any idea the kind of security they're going to have on the purser's safe?
I do not know,
Dracos said.
What is a purser's safe?
The purser is the guy on a starliner in charge of money, Jack told him. His safe is the vault where passengers can store their valuables during the trip. He waved his hand in a wide sweep around him. And on a ship like this, there are going to be some really serious valuables. Jewelry, data tubes, maybe even some one-of-a-kind art objects. It's going to be like breaking into a bank. Worse than a bank, really, because there's no place to run after the job.
You cannot do it.
Jack shook his head. Maybe Uncle Virgil could have done it with the right tools and a week or two to get ready. He was good enough. But I'm not alone. Dracos's green eyes glittered.
But you are not alone, Jack,
he said quietly.
I am here.
Jack gazed at the dragon, a strange feeling stirring inside him. Here was this alien creature willing to help him out of a tight spot. Not only willing to help, but willing to stick his own neck into danger doing it. It was like the feeling of slowly starting to thaw out again in a warm room after standing around half frozen in the cold all afternoon. For a moment, despite the trouble he was still in, Jack felt a distant glimmer of hope. Then the rest of the reality caught up with him. Dracos wasn't doing this out of the goodness of his heart, or whatever was in his chest pumping all that black blood around. He had a fleet full of his people to rescue, and the moment Jack was the only tool he had. If Jack went down, Dracos went down with him. The dragon was here, but only until he found someone else to help him carry out his mission. When he did it, it would be goodbye. The warmth faded away, and the cold quietly closed in again. I appreciate the offer, he said, but unless you know a really good safecracker within a couple of days' flight from here, I don't know how you can help.
Do not give up hope,
Dracos insisted.
I am a poet warrior of the Kada. I am not without resources.
Yeah, that must be some course of study, Jack said with a sniff. Burglary for Warriors 102. Must first have taken Burglary for Warriors 101. Dracos flashed his teeth once, but made no comment. Bending back over the desk, he resumed his doodling and quiet singing. Jack frowned at him, starting to feel irritated. His life was hanging by a piece of cobweb, and the dragon was playing with a notepad? What are you doing? He demanded.
Attempting to unmask our enemy,
Draco said.
Come and see.
Frowning harder, Jack got up and crossed to the desk. Dracos hadn't been simply doodling. He had been writing. Writing?
The spacecraft you were brought aboard had these words beside the entrance,
Dracos explained, touching the notepad with the tip of his tongue.
Because the human drabs took care to cover your eyes when you left, we may assume the words are important.
Probably the name of the ship, Jack said, his heart starting to beat faster. But I thought you said you didn't read or write our language.
I do not,
Dracos said. You memorized the shapes then?
Not directly,
The dragon said.
Alien symbols are difficult for one unfamiliar with them to memorize. But I am a poet warrior of the Kada, and so as you were taken aboard the ship, I composed a song.
Jack blinked. A song?
Yes, observe.
Draco set the stylus against the paper.
And to the right, from tail to head,
He sang.
Stands single soldier, tall but dead.
He threw a slightly wavy line that did indeed look kind of like a Kada seen from above. A capital I, Jack decided, drawn in a stylized form.
Just like the first, again it stands.
Dracos went on.
Two soldiers lean to, with joined hands.
He drew two more wavy lines, this time with an inverted V angled that connected at the top. Another wavy line connected them midway up. An A?
Ashantin waits to hear a sound. Shall two eyes listen at the ground?
He drew a vertical line with two Google-like eyes beside it. Seen from the side, Jack had to admit it did look like the two eyes of someone with his ear pressed against the ground. Seen upright, of course, it was a capital B.
Squeezed ring of fire, and what is more,
Draco sang.
A fire burns within its core.
A capital O with some sort of marking in the center. Jack couldn't tell what the mark was supposed to be, but it didn't matter. The thing was definitely an O.
A blade thrust left to base of hedge. Naught can be seen except the edge.
Jack smiled at that one. It was a capital L with the same waviness as the other letters. Now that he thought about it, it did indeed look like light shining off the edge of a knife point with the rest of the knife in shadow. Dracos had an interesting way of looking at things.
Stands final soldier, single one.
Dracos drew another eye.
Hand down, for now the tale is done.
He laid down the stylus.
And it is finished,
He said. I will be dipped in butter, Jack said, shaking his head in admiration. I was just plain flat out brilliant.
I merely made use of my talents and training,
Draco said modestly. Still, to Jack's ear, he sounded pleased at the praise.
As you do yourself. Tell me, what do the words say?
Jack swiveled the paper around to face him. Advocatus diaboli, he read. Huh. Advocatus diaboli.
You recognize the name?
Dracos asked. Jack scratched his cheek. I don't even recognize the words, he said, swiveling the desk computer around and punching up for a dictionary. After all that work and his own compliments, he hoped Dracos hadn't messed up with this somewhere. It doesn't even sound like English. He typed in the words. Aha, he said, nodding as the page came up. It didn't sound like English because it isn't. It's a phrase in Old Latin, devil's advocate. Says that someone who argues against an authority's point of view. Odd name for a ship. Was there anything else written there?
There were no other words,
Draco said.
but beneath them was a small design. It may have been the same as the one on the sealed warehouse door.
Jack felt his throat tighten. You mean the Braxton Universis logo?
It may have been,
Draco said.
As I have said, it is difficult to memorize alien designs.
No, you nailed it just fine, Jack said sourly. A Braxton cargo, a Braxton ship. The whole thing was Braxton right from the start.
But for what purpose?
How should I know? Jack snapped, swiveling the computer back around. A fancy plot to take down some rival, maybe? A big corporate merger that someone won't play ball over? How blazes should I know? He stomped across the room and flopped back onto the bed, glaring bleakly into a corner of the room. All along, he'd been clinging to the hope that the Braxton cargo part had been pure coincidence, that it was some old rival of his uncle's looking for vengeance, not something coming at him from Braxton Universis itself. But thanks to Dracos' cleverness, that hope was now shattered. This was some corporate game, all right. The vast power of Braxton Universis was on one side, some unknown player was on the other, and Jack Morgan was dead center in the middle of it.
You are troubled.
Jack shifted his glare to Dracos. You bet your tail I'm troubled, he growled. And if you had any brains, you would be too. This is Cornelius Braxton we're up against. He took another look at the dragon's face and instantly regretted his words. I'm sorry, he said, a layer of guilt adding to the rest of his misery. I know you just don't know.
I am not offended,
Dracos assured him.
Tell me about him.
What's to tell? Jack asked, shrugging uncomfortably. And a spiral arm's worth of hardball businessman. Braxton's one of the hardest. He inherited a business from his father and built it into an empire. He's smart, he's ruthless, and he gets whatever he wants. Pulling the metal suitcase from under his bed, he opened it. And whatever he's up to this time, this thing is the key, he said, taking out the cylinder. I wish I knew what was in it.
Or what is in the one you are to switch it for,
Draco said. That too, Jack agreed glumly, peering at the cylinder. I don't know whether he's trying to plant this one on someone or get the other one away from him. Either way, when the roof caves in, there's only going to be one fall guy.
Pardon?
Fall guy, Jack repeated. The guy who takes the fall, the blame for something someone else did. In this case, me. Dracos uncoiled from the chair and patted over the Jack's side.
What then do you propose we do?
For a moment, Jack had the sudden urge to stroke the dragon's head, just like he might have petted a dog. He resisted the impulse. I don't know, he confessed, turning the cylinder over in his hand instead. Remember, I'm their guarantee of Uncle Virgil's good behavior. If they're willing to let me out of their sight, it's because I'm not going to be out of their sight. Dracos twitched the tip of his tail.
They will have someone watching you.
Watching me and watching for Uncle Virgil, Jack said, which means I can't run and I can't call the police. And I can't just sit around and do nothing. What's left? The dragon was silent a moment.
There is a style of warfare the Kadar called Koi Sheikh, he said. It speaks of a large stone thrown into quiet water to force a response from hiding fish.
Yeah, we've got something like that too, Jack growled. We call it rocking the boat. What's your point? Dracos ran a paw thoughtfully along the side of the cylinder.
Let us do as they demand, he said. Let us steal the item and replace it with this duplicate. We will then follow the ripples from the stone and see where they lead.
Jack snorted. You make it sound so easy.
I am a warrior of the Kadar,
Dracos said.
You are skilled in the arts of theft and cunning. Together we can surely find a way.
Jack shook his head. I wouldn't bet on that, he warned, but I don't have anything better to offer. He returned the cylinder to its hiding place under the bed and stood up. I guess the least we can do is go take a look at the safe, he added, stepping to the closet and getting out the suit coat that went with his new shirt and slacks. You coming? Dracos' response was to leap in through Jack's open-necked shirt.
And then?
The dragon asked from his shoulder. Jack took a deep breath. We'll come up with something. I hope.